Welcome back to AGTube. I want to demonstrate to you a method of basically comparing two alpha rosters. What I have in front of me is two alpha rosters with 45,624 names on both rosters on day one and on day two. So again, 45,624. If you select a column and you go down here to count, you'll see it. The reason I subtract one is because the first row is column headings. So they both have the exact same number. And this was a fundamental flaw that we found in Afghanistan, but people assume that your alpha rosters are good because the two total numbers of those spreadsheets are correct, and that is absolutely wrong. And I'll show you there are some people that are on this roster that are not on this roster. And most people, if you don't have a method, a well thought out method of how you're going to compare those two rosters, you're going to start calling out names from A to Z. And with 45,000 names, you're going to be there for a while. So I'm going to demonstrate a method to those of you willing to receive it. And this is not the only way. There's many ways to do this, but just take a look at what we're doing. So the first thing I want to do with this spreadsheet is I can close it because I can see that I have a unique identifier for each person. And when I have a unique identifier, this is really easy, really easy. If I don't have a unique identifier, then I need to create one, which is what I've had to do in some cases. So in some cases, I had to take a name and combine it with a UIC. Not 100% accurate, but sometimes it's as close as I can get. But I have a unique identifier on both. So I'm done with the spreadsheets per se. I'm going to open up Access and open up a blank desktop database. And we're just going to call this Alpha Roster Scrub. And I'm going to save it on my desktop. Click Create. So they start you out with a table. Let's go ahead and close it. And I'm going to go to external data, and I want to import and link a spreadsheet. So now I'm going to go browse for that spreadsheet. And I want to import the day one tab first. And the first row contains column headings, so now it made it column headings. And I can skip through this and keep hitting next. I'm going to let Access add a primary key. And I'm going to call this TBL for table day one and finish. So it's importing all 45,000 of those records into my database, and I can go look at it, and now basically I've got that exact same spreadsheet inside my database. So what I want to do is repeat those steps, go to the same spreadsheet, and this time I want to import the second tab on it, which was day two. And first row contains the headings. Next, I'm going to let Access add a primary key, and I'm going to name this one table day two. And your naming conventions are very important. I don't want to really get into that too deep, but never put any spaces in anything's name in any database. I mean, it doesn't stop anything, but it just makes it simple. It makes it more complex later on. And if you look at how TapDB does its business with email pool and data store. No field has a space in it. It puts an underscore there. But so now I have day one, I got day two, and if I click this last record, it's telling me 45,644. So I can see that it added some empty records, but the last person on here is 45,624. So now I can close that out. I don't want to save changes to the layout. The layout's fine, the data's fine. But what I want to do is create a query in design view, and the two tables that I want to use are table day one and table day two. So I can add them like that. I'm going to remove them real quick, but if I want to add them like this, I can just drag them over. So these are the two tables that I want to compare to each other. And in order to do this, you have to identify how this information is related. And they're related by the DOD ID, which means that this social over here, you're telling Access that it's the same person over here on table day two. So we need to adjust the relationship here. Double click that black line, and it's saying only include the rows where the join fields from both tables are equal. So if there were 10 names on each table and 8 of the names were the same on both tables, then I'm only going to get 8 names, and I'm not going to see any of those other guys that are not on both tables. So I absolutely don't want that option. For this first query, I want to go with option 2. I want all the records from day 1. Show them all. And only those records from table day 2 where the join fields are equal. And then we'll come back and build another query and use option 3. So now that we've done that, let's put a name here. And I'm gonna rename this day 1 underscore name. Table 2, I'm gonna rename it day 2 underscore name. And then I'm gonna run it just to look at what I got. Got my day 1 name, day 2 name. And I'm just looking through the data, and something should stick out like a sore thumb at some point as I'm looking through all of this information. Because really what I want to see is, are any of these names in day 2 null? And it is. So there were 16 names that were on day 1 table that were not on day 2 table. And you can see who they are: Cam Newton, Ryan Tannehill, Carson Palmer, Matt Stafford, Russell Wilson, Eli Manning, Tony Romo, so on and so forth. So there were 16 guys that were on this list of 45,000 that were not on the list on day 2 table. So I'm going to save that file, save as, save object as, and I'm going to call this query not on day 2. So I'm happy with that. So now I want to go back and adjust this query and then save it as a new name. I'm going to name this one not on day one, and we're going to look and see who was on the other roster that wasn't on day one's roster. And to do that, I just flip the option. I want all the records from day two, so all 45,000, and only show those records from day one where the join fields are equal. So now I need to change my is null over to meaning there is a name here, but I want the ones only show the ones where there's not a name on day one. And I'm gonna say is not null on day two, and it showed me 16 other names: Matt Castle, Robert Griffin III, Marcus Mariota, John McCown, Brian Hoyer. It's showing you the names that were on that list of day two that were not on day one. And initially we said that both rosters had the exact same amount of people, but they did not have 100% by name accountability. So a numbers game, yes. A by name game, unquestionably no. So again, just to recap, I got to make sure that each record has a unique identifier. If you have an SSN, it is the best, or a DODID. Those are two great unique identifiers for each person. If you have that condition, you bring both tables in, create the relationship between the two tables, and save the queries like that. So now I've got a list of names, and I don't want to show day one here. And let's look at day two. I don't want to show day two here. So I've got two queries: day two name, day one name, 16 names on each. And I want to get them both onto the same one. Now at this point, this may not be for everybody who's not comfortable with access, but for those who are, I just want to show you a simple way to put these two together so that the report can include everybody who was not reported on one roster or another. So we're going to call this a status, and we're going to say not on day one for all of these guys, and then close it. And here we're going to say status. We're creating a field called status, and we're going to say not on day two, and run it. Yes. So ultimately, what I want to do is I want a roster of all people that were not reported on the report, on either report. So you have to write that in SQL. That's the easiest way for me to do it. If you go to Union, and in SQL I can say select, and I just want to make sure I got day two name and status. So select day one underscore name status from, where am I getting it from? Oh, it didn't like the name. So it gave me that, but I need the other 16 names on there. Now you could paste it in Excel, but if this is something that I'm going to permanently be doing and I just want to click a button and it do it, then I need to write it in SQL. And so basically I'm saying select day 2 name and status from query not on day 1. So I asked for two columns, this column and that column from this table. And then I want to union select the exact same thing, day 1 underscore name and status from query not on day 2. And that should combine both rosters into one, so I should have 32 records when I'm done. And there it is, 32 records. I want to save this, save object as personnel not reported. And I can tell exactly which one they were not reported on. They were not reported on day 2, day 1, day 2. So I know exactly which roster that you were left off of, and I can send that back to the units to say, hey, you left these guys off. Was it an accident or whatnot? But basically, I can go back to the G1 by name and tell him what the difference between these two rosters are. And you can apply that to millions of scenarios in the AG field. If we're scrubbing UICs, we're scrubbing DMSLs, PSC codes, it would do it for you as long as they have something in common for you to do a comparison on, and a computer would do it with way more accuracy than any of us can.